Hello everybody and welcome to the second video on random numbers. In this video I will not introduce any new concepts. What I want to do is unify several of the concepts we have seen so far. In particular, I want to unify loops and ifs with the random number material we just saw last time. So in this video I will write a single program for you that integrates these ideas. And I hope that watching me code for 15 or 20 minutes and articulating what I'm doing as I'm thinking through what I'm doing will be instructive for you. So what I'm going to do is just write a single program that models this sort of toy casino game. And before I describe this to you, let me just say ahead of time, you may want to just pause the video after this game description and see if you can code this yourself. That might be instructive for you. And if you can code it, maybe when you're done you can compare and contrast your code to mine. Right? But so you don't have to watch me code this, of course. You can just try it on your own. So here is the game that we will play. You sit down at a casino table with an initial bankroll of $A. And so all I mean by that, my bankroll, I just mean the amount of money you come in with in your pocket. So you are going to sit down at this table with 400 bucks or whatever. That's your bankroll. So here's how the game works. You bet X dollars, and the amount you bet can't exceed how much money you have. Okay, so if you only have 200 bucks in your pocket, you are not allowed to bet 500 bucks. The casino worker will throw 2 dice. If the sum of the faces of the 2 dice is prime, so 2, 3, 5, 7, or 11, you will win X dollars in profit. But if they roll something that's not prime, you will lose your bet amount. As long as you still have money left, you can play again. And you can make a different bet if you want to. Okay, so every single time you play this game, you can bet different amounts. You will play this game until your bankroll has grown to a pre-specified goal, and it's pre-specified by you. And so all I mean by this is many people who play casino games will roll in with like 500 bucks and they will tell themselves in their head, you know, if I reach $1,000, I'm going to stop. So this program will allow you to say that out loud, that you're going to set a goal for yourself. Now in real life, many people don't abide by their own goals. So if I say to myself, yeah, if I make $1,000, I'm going to leave. But then in the heat of the moment, when I do make $1,000, maybe I ride my hot hand, maybe I stay. But in this program, we will force the user to stop once they reach their goal. The other way you stop playing is that the table has a limit on payout. So the table will not let you make more than $10,000. The other way you can stop playing the game is if you go broke. So basically there are 3 ways you can stop playing this game. You reach a goal that you have pre-specified, or you reach the table limit in profit, or you lose all your money. So let's write a program that lets us play this game and keeps track of how many rounds we play. Okay, so let's now articulate. Let me just show you an example of gameplay first. So suppose you sit down at the table with $100 in your pocket and you want to leave with $200 in your pocket. Then you will play until you've got that $200 in your pocket, or you've gone broke. Okay. So if you sit down with $100 and you tell yourself, oh, if I have $200, I'm going to leave, that means it's impossible for you to reach the table winnings cap of $10,000. And on the other hand, if you sit down with $100, you can't leave with 12 grand in your pocket because the table cap on winnings is 10,000. So if you sit down with $100, the most you can leave with in your pocket is 10,100 bucks. Okay, because the table is not going to pay you more than $10,000 in profit. So before we write this code, let's articulate the kinds of things that we will need. First, let's think about what we have to keep track of. So what kind of variables do we need? Well, we need all sorts of variables. Here are some of them. We should probably create a variable to keep track of how much money I have. and call that bankroll. So bankroll is just shorthand for the amount of money I have. Since we need to keep track of profits to know if the table will kick us off, we should probably have a profit variable that will keep track of that. We should probably have a variable to keep track of my goal. So if I sit down with $100 and I want to leave with $200, we should probably have a variable that keeps track of that $200 amount. A variable that lets me enter bet amounts, variables for my 2 dice, since I'm throwing 2 dice, a variable for the sum of the 2 dice, a variable for how many rounds I play, since I'm going to keep track of that. And this is probably it, but if we need more, we can always create more. So what will the program look like? Well, as long as I have money, so my bankroll is bigger than 0. Also, as long as I haven't reached my goal yet, so my bankroll is less than my goal amount, and also my profit is less than 10 grand, so I haven't reached the table cap on winnings. As long as any of those 3 conditions, as long as all 3 of those conditions are true, the program should keep going. Okay, so I should keep playing as long as 3 separate conditions are true. This condition needs to be true, I still have money. This condition needs to be true, I haven't reached my goal. And this condition needs to be true, that I haven't reached the cap yet, the winnings cap. So the program should keep running as long as all those 3 things are true. So since I used the phrase as long as, that means I will need a loop. So as long as this is all true right here, I should be able to keep playing the game code. So I'm going to have a loop that is predicated on this condition being true, and inside of the loop will be the code that plays the game. For each round of play, I should be able to get a bet. I should be able to place a bet. And as long as the user gives me something invalid, so something that's something that is more than the amount they currently have, the program should force the user to give the program something valid. So if I only have $200 in my pocket, if I try to enter 300, 400, 500, etc. as a bet amount, the computer should force me to lower that amount to 200 or less. So inside of this loop that's playing the game, I should be able to make a bet. The code should then roll the dice for me. The code should also check whether or not I win. So remember that a prime dice roll is a win and a not prime is a loss. So the program should keep track of what is rolled and whether or not I win. And based on whether or not I win, the program should either give me some money or take my money. And then I should just repeat this as long as, I'm still not broke, as long as I still haven't reached my goal, etc. So here's sort of a schematic of the program, right? So basically there's one big loop. Inside of the loop I bet, the dice are rolled, I see whether or not I won, etc. So let me now go to the compiler and write this. So notice that since I'm going to be doing dice throwing, I need randomness here. So I've already got my seed command going, and I also have the ctime library plugged in here. So let me start by declaring my variables, and let me just get my variable list here. Okay, so I need to keep track of how much money I have. I need to keep track of how much profit I've made. I need to keep track of my goal, the amount of money I'm aiming for. I need to keep track of what my bet is currently. I have 2 dice that I will be throwing. I have their sum, and I have number of rounds. Okay, so here are my variables. And one thing you might ask yourself is, do any of these variables need to be initialized? So does it make sense to give bet some sort of initial value? Does it make sense to give number of rounds an initial value? And if you think about it, there are 2 variables here that should be set to 0. I haven't played anything yet, so there are no rounds to keep track of yet. And also I have no profit yet, because I haven't played yet. So none of the other variables need to be initialized. They will be either given to you by the user or the program itself will like roll the dice, right? Okay, so I have my variables going. First, let me ask the user how much money they have. How much money you have. So that's their bankroll amount. That's how much they have in their pocket when they come to the table. And then we should ask them, what's your money goal? Your bankroll goal? And we should get that from them. Maybe we should say the word bankroll here. So how much money do you want to leave with in your pocket? Oh, I forgot a greater than sign. Okay. And we should probably tell the user at this point that, you know, if their bankroll is $200, suppose that right here they enter $20 billion. Okay. So we should probably tell them that no matter how lucky they are not going to leave with $20 billion because that far exceeds the table cap on winnings. So let's just tell them that if their goal is too big relative to how much they have. So since the table cap on winnings is 10 grand, your goal will never be able to exceed more than 10 grand past the bankroll. So just FYI, you can only get 10,000 in winnings at this table. So your goal cannot be reached. And so, you know, if you want to in this program, you can force them to enter in a goal that's more realistic. I would just leave it at this. So I'm just going to tell them, like, hey, man, keep dreaming, you know, but we're going to kick you off once you reach $10,000 in profit. Okay, so now let me put in my big global loop. So I'll put the condition in a second, but this loop here will let me play the game. So all of gameplay will occur in here. And I want to make sure that I keep playing as long as I'm not broke. So bankroll is bigger than 0. Also, as long as bankroll is less than my goal, I should keep playing. Also, my profit can't be too big. Okay, so as long as I'm not broke, as long as I haven't reached my goal, as long as my profit is small enough, I should play. So what does it look like to play? Well, first, let's ask the user how much they want to bet. So what's your bet amount? Let's get it from them. Once they've made their bet, we roll the dice. So let's roll die 1. It is a random number between 1 and 6. And there's that code. Let's roll dice 2. It is also a random number between 1 and 6. And then let's just form their sum. Okay, so what's happened so far is we've asked the user what they want to bet, and then we've rolled the dice. So now we need to keep track of whether or not the user won or not. Okay, so right here, if they win, we should give them some money. So inside these parentheses here, so give money because they won. We need to somehow think about how we're going to update how much money they have, and also we need a condition here that says if they won. So remember that they win if this sum value is prime. And so you have code that will test whether or not a given number is prime because you wrote it in class. So you could put that like code somewhere in here. You could copy and paste it in here. So check whether or not sum is prime somehow right here. But since there are only 5 prime numbers to worry about, since we're just rolling dice, let me just hard code those values in. So in this case, this will be easier than using code you already have. Oops, and I skipped one, didn't I? Okay, so if the sum is 2, or the sum is 3, or 5, or 7, or 11, those are the 5 prime numbers, they won. So we should tell them they won. Okay, so you won, and we should tell them how much money they won. They won their bet amount. Okay, so as I described in the slides, the payout structure is 1-to-1. So if they bet $5, the casino will hand them $5. So what will happen is their bankroll amount will increase by the bet amount. So if you win a given round, the casino will hand you your bet amount, and therefore your bankroll will go up by that much. And notice we also have to keep track of profit. We have to keep track of how much I've won. So initially I've won nothing, but if I win here, then profit will also go up by the same amount. So if I roll a prime number, I get some money because I just won that round. Otherwise, I lose that round, and so now I should say, you lost a certain amount of money. And just to make sure this all outputs nicely later, let me put some new lines everywhere. Okay, so if you lose, what should happen to the amount of money you have? Well, you got to take the amount of money you have and subtract your bet amount. And same thing for the profit. Okay, so if you lose, the amount of money you earn has gone down, the amount of money you have has gone down, and the amount of profit has gone down also. Okay, so now we've gotten a bet from them, we've rolled the dice, we now know whether or not they've won, and furthermore, we've updated their money amounts based on whether or not they won. And so now we should probably tell them, like, okay, you now have this much money. And once we've told them their new money amount, we should just start the game over. As long as they're not broke, they haven't reached their goal yet, etc. So here's the bare bones of what you would need for this sort of program. As long as all this is true, you should probably get a bet from them. You should roll some dice. Based on the dice roll, you should check whether or not they won or lost. If they won, you give them money. If they lost, you take money away. And then at the end, you can tell them how much money they have and just repeat, okay? And so before I run this, I should say here, you rolled, I should probably just output what happened just so we can see. So there's the results. So I'm going to output the two individual dice rolls just so I can see them. Oops. Dice 1 is all one word. Dice 2. Okay. So you rolled that and that for a sum of sum. Okay. And somewhere in here I should probably put a couple of new lines just so everything displays nicely. Okay, so this loop now will roll the dice, show me what got rolled. Okay, so I suppose you don't have to show the user what got rolled, but that's nice. And then based on whether or not you win, stuff happens. Now, once the loop is over, so once you're right here in the code, the loop is done, therefore gameplay is done. So all that's left to do out here is just basically tell the user, not the loser necessarily, but the user what happened. So if their bankroll ever actually got down to 0, then you could say, loser, get out, right? You lost everything. So that's one thing that could happen. Why does it, oh, oops, semicolon. So their bankroll could be 0 after this loop is over. Another thing that could happen to the user is that they could have actually reached their goal. So as long as the goal amount is greater than or equal to the bankroll amount, that means they reached their goal, or maybe actually went a little beyond that. And so we could tell them, you reached your goal, congrats. So the only other thing that could have happened to them was they reached the winnings cap on the table. So they actually reached that 10 grand in profit. So let's just tell them that as the last case here. You reached the table winnings cap of 10 10 grand. Get out. Make it a little more. So take your money and get out. Okay. Okay, so let's see if this all makes sense here. So I've got my variables going. Okay, I get the initial amount, their goal. I tell them if their goal amount is unrealistic or not. I then go into my gameplay loop where I roll the dice. Based on the dice roll, I either give them money or take money away. I then tell them how much they currently have. That will keep going until I go broke or I win in one of two ways. And then once that's over, now I'll tell them whether or not they lost or won. So let's run this and see if it works. I never really know if something will work until I run it. So basically what you should do is fiddle around with this now. So I'm going to do several different runs of this and see what happens. So let's say I have 400 bucks. What's my money goal? Let's say I want $1,000. So on my first pass through, I'm going to bet 200 bucks. Okay, so you rolled 3-3 for a sum of 6. 6 is not prime. You lost 200 bucks. Oh no. So 400 went down to 200. Now I'm going to bet 200. Let's see what happens. Oh, nice. 3 and 4 for a sum of 7. I won. So now I'm back up to 200. Sorry, back up to 400. 400. I'll bet everything again. I'm feeling very lucky this time. Ooh, 6 and 5 for a sum of 11. So I doubled my money. Man, got a hot hand. Let's keep this going. I'm going to bet everything. Oh no. I rolled a 2 and a 2 for a sum of 4, which is not prime. So I now have $0. That breaks me out of the loop because now bankroll is 0. So it says, loser, get out. You lost everything. Okay. So it seems to work okay. Let me just point out that there are a couple of things I forgot to deal with here. First of all, I was supposed to keep track of the number of rounds played. So let me just do that. I initialize that to 0. And so every single pass through the loop, I should up it by 1. So at the end here, once I'm done with the loop, let me just tell the user, you played number of rounds, just so they have that data going. The other thing that I know I didn't deal with, and I'm going to leave this to you to deal with in the interest of time, is that suppose I sit down at the table with 100 bucks, okay? And suppose I do really good and I turn that 100 bucks into 9 grand. So I've basically made 9 grand in profit, okay? Suppose that with that 9 grand, I bet everything. So I have 9 grand, I bet 9 grand, and suppose I win. If I win, that means my bankroll is now up to 18 grand, okay? And so I've basically just made 18 grand in profit. So this code will kick me out because I've made too much profit. But what the casino actually would do is if you had 8 grand, or whatever I said, yeah, 8 grand, it wouldn't give you 8 grand in profit right there. It would chop the profit off to make sure they only give you a total of 10,000 in profit. So you can see from this code I've done nothing to deal with that, right? So let me just say that scenario again. I start with 100 bucks. I somehow turn it into 8 grand. Wow, I did really well, right? So I basically have a profit of 8 grand right there, of 7,900, right? So then I could bet all of that 8 grand, and if I win, get another 8 grand for a profit of like 16 grand, okay? And so again, the casino would not give me all of that 8 grand as a payout on that second round. They would only give me 2 grand for a total of 10 grand in profit. So this code does not deal with that, okay? So I'm going to leave that to you to put that into the code if you want to. So it's sort of an external exercise for you. So let me just say up front, the code doesn't deal with that, right? And it should if you really want this code up and running to actually play this game. So I already ran through this once where I lost, and it seemed to work okay. Let me now try to win. So I'm going to sit down with 5 grand. Maybe my goal is going to be 6 grand. I'm going to bet $1,000 and see if I can get up to that 6 grand. Oh, nice. Okay, you rolled 6 and a 1, total of 7. I won $1,000. I now have $6,000. Oh, that's my goal. Sweet. Oh, and it exited the loop. You played 1 rounds. Okay, so if you were actually going to do this code, you would make the English proper here. So if you only played 1 round, it would say round, not rounds. But whatever, let's forget about that. And it says you reached your goal. Congratulations. Okay, so this seems to work. Let me just see if there's anything. Okay, so let's do like 10 billion here. Okay, so it says just FYI, you're not going to get up to that. Okay, that's fine. So now let's see if I can bet more than I have. So I have 500 bucks. Let's bet 600 bucks. Ooh. Okay, so it let me do that. It wasn't supposed to let me do that. So there's something else I must have forgotten. Right here. What is your bet amount? I get a bet amount. We should force that bet amount to be legitimate. So as long as bet is more than how much money I have, sorry, forget about that email there. As long as my bet is too big, I should tell them that bet is too big. Try again. And make them do it again. Okay. So I should say that I am just sort of programming this off the top of my head so that I can talk out loud as I do it. And so when you do things off the top of your head, you will forget things. But that's totally fine. The way that you see if you forgot something, the way that you see if your code works the way it's supposed to, is by doing what I just did. I just ran the code with different numbers, and I checked to see whether it did what I wanted it to do. And in this case, it didn't. So now let me fix that. So 500 bucks. Okay, so I'm going to try to leave with 1,000. I'm going to try to bet 700 bucks. That bet's too big. Try again. I want to bet 700 bucks, man. Too big. Try again. I want to bet 900 bucks. Too big. Try again. That much. Too big. Try again. Okay, etc. So it seems to now be forcing me to actually bet a legitimate amount. 450. Okay, so now it'll let me. Now it says you have 50 bucks. What's your bet amount? I want to bet 75 bucks. That bet's too big. Oh. So it seems to be forcing me to play legitimately. Right? So I'll bet 50 bucks. Oh, sweet. So I won that round, so I win 50 bucks, and now I have 100 bucks. Okay, so I will put this code on Moodle for you to play with if you so desire. And I should say, this is really bare bones code. Like I said before, it doesn't actually kick you out if profit gets too high. It will kind of do that, but you sort of can have this sort of like one extra profit round, like I described earlier. So you would want to fix that. If you were to actually publish this code, you would have comments like, this loop does the game play? So you'd have little comments in here to a user saying little things like this. So there are all sorts of ways this code can be improved, but we've spent enough time with it now. I hope that you watching me do this, watching me unify whiles inside of whiles, right? So loops inside of loops, with ifs, with randomness. I hope this has been instructive for you, and I hope you got something out of just watching me sit here and do this.